Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Notorious Momz, the podcast. And I am here with my special guest, Lavender from the Lavender Code.
Hi,
Hey, girl.
how you doing?
Introduce yourself to the people. Tell them who you are and what you do.
Okay, so my name is Lavender, and I have a company called the Lavender Code where I am an aspiring herbalist, but I'm still making teas for people for their healing and their mental clarity and all kinds of balances for their spirituality. I also do energy readings and tarot readings, and I'm just open to the healing. So that's what I do.
Dope. And your teas, they're completely like herbal. It's
Yeah.
like specific herbs for like specific things.
Yes, specific herbs for either if you're having trouble sleeping, which I've had quite a few clients come to me about, insomnia and stuff like that. So I have a special blend called Purple Wave,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a blend that has herbs that will help you to stabilize your mood, get you sleeping, and
Mm-hmm.
then within like a half hour, 45 minutes, you're nice and knocked out.
Oh, I think
Mhm.
we're gonna talk offline about that because
Oh yeah.
I usually don't have trouble sleeping. I really don't. Like, and I talk to people a lot because I do speak to a lot of people that for some reason or another, they have trouble sleeping. And usually it's like all I need to be is tired. My head hits the pillow and I'm out for the count. But for the past like week or so, I've been having trouble like not really falling asleep, but staying asleep. Like
Okay.
I'll wake up, I'll go to sleep and then I'll wake up like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm just like wired.
Yeah.
Maybe because I was like going to the gym really early, but I don't know. It's been
That could
weird.
be a thing. And the stresses that are happening, in the household
Yes.
as well.
Yes, for
So I get
sure.
it.
Yeah, my husband's been sick
Yeah.
and it's been like a rough week. So maybe that's what it is. I hope next
Yeah,
week is a better week.
could definitely be. You'll get back on it soon. No worries.
I hope, girl,
But
because
we'll definitely talk about that offline.
I need my sleep. Let me
Yeah.
tell you, I
Me
don't
too.
know about anybody else, but for me, if I don't get proper rest, I'm very, very cranky.
Yes.
I'm not one of those people. I cannot function on 2 to 3 hours of sleep. No, no, I need my sleep.
Yes. Yes. Sleep is that necessary thing. It's very underrated. Rest is very underrated.
Right.
We don't understand how good it is for our bodies and our mental state to
Yes.
rest.
Yes, for sure.
Yes.
And that's what I tell people, like try to get as much rest as you can. But given the life that we're living nowadays, everybody's like just in a rush to do things and it's just like so much going on. And life is slowly going back to normal.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But yeah. So let's get down to this. Let's get down to this topic. So I think I
Yes.
would say like 2 weeks ago, I went on a live and I was talking about, I talked briefly, well, it wasn't that brief, but we talked briefly about like toxic family members. And, there's been conversations about toxic relationships, toxic friendships, but I want to talk a little bit about family because I feel like this is a topic that a lot of people are very uncomfortable speaking about because
Mhm.
nobody wants to talk about their family,
Mhm.
you know? And we're not about to talk about our families, but we are going to get to or try to get to like the root of these kind of issues. So when I talk about like toxic family members, unfortunately, like because of the culture, and I talk about this a lot too, like our culture coming from
Yes.
a Hispanic home, Puerto Rican, um, there's certain things that I would say my mom, because my mom is very super traditional when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
She followed the traditions of her mom,
Right.
and all of the traditions were not very good.
Yeah. I get it. Trust me, I do.
So it's like I feel like, I want to just touch a little bit about like my grandma. My grandma, um, she was not a very nice person. I'm gonna put that out there. She was not very nice. She was super stern.
Mm.
I would say borderline abusive, you
Yeah.
know.
Wow.
My
Mhm.
uncles and my aunts is probably not gonna like me for this, but she
Right.
was. I felt like verbally, she was not a warm, affectionate person. And I
Right.
feel like it's because of the way she grew up. Back in Puerto Rico, there was a lot of poverty.
Mhm.
Way back when people had a lot of kids, no money, no food.
Right.
Um, so it caused people to, I guess, become a little, how do you say,
Rigid.
like, yes, rigid and a little bit like out of touch with their feelings. And I
Right.
feel like that's how my grandmother was. And it wasn't a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, it just wasn't a good thing.
I mean, I have to really like, I'm relating with you. That really resonates with me because, my grandmother, my mother's mother, she was very like stoic. It was rare when she said, I love you. It was all about money.
Oh,
And
yes, that's
yeah,
good.
and it was because the way she grew up. But then when she met my grandfather, she kind of got spoiled because he was a merchant marine. He brought her things from all over the world. And, she just like had my mother and my aunt and uncle doing all the housework while she went out and did her thing. And
Mhm.
she just showed them no affection and it trickled down to us, you
Right.
know, from her because my mother was super affectionate.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, like
Yes.
she was the complete opposite of her mom,
Right.
which I can appreciate. But my mother also carried some of those traditions over where you respect the husband, you do what he says, you know, and she just like was still on service mode, which was again, very different from my grandmother.
Right.
But because she was always cleaning the house and everything as a kid, she did everything service mode in our house, you know, with us coming up.
Right.
And it was like you serve your husband first,
Yes.
you do everything
Yeah.
for them. They're the
Yeah.
Latin kings, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And, we just, it caused a little trauma,
Yes.
you know?
I can agree with that. Like in my household, it was, so my parents are very there's a very big age gap. Very, very big age gap. And though my grandmother was very, very rigid as well, like in your case, my mom tried to be a little bit more loving and affectionate, which she always has been.
Yeah,
But it was just a lot of the ways that my grandmother was is that she carried over.
right.
My mom and my dad, they both worked two jobs. So usually it was like, okay, whoever got home first was the one who, cooked first. And
Hmm.
she was actually she was very I guess, how do you say? She was like in service mode
Right.
to an extent,
Yeah.
but not like fully.
Right.
Because she worked two jobs and she was always like out of the house.
Yeah.
Um but when it came to certain things, like, so the thing that carried over is that my mom and my grandmother had this really weird relationship. I don't know what the issue was there because, I was really little, but my grandmother can say anything to her and she can be disrespectful to her. And my mother would just never say a word. She
Wow.
would never say anything. She would put her head down, and it was so much of a respect thing, I guess. You never
Right.
wanna be disrespectful to, your parents,
Right.
and that's one thing where my mom and I differ.
Right.
I got a
Yeah.
problem with that.
Yeah. Me too. I'm gonna tell you, as a kid, is when I really rebelled. As a teenager, rather, it was to my mid to later teens where I honestly just started to like open up my mouth a lot more. And
Mhm.
I always said to myself, I'm always gonna let my kids, if I ever have kids, I'm always gonna allow my kids to say if I'm wrong or not. And that's
Right,
exactly what I did with my kids. And, it turned out great because we have an open relationship.
right.
And my son can come to me for anything. He tells me anything and everything. He's very comfortable. I made a safe space for him. Whereas
Yes.
me as a child, it wasn't so safe. And so I rebelled a lot
Right.
because I think the reason why I rebelled, and this is like where I see it really deep seated, is because I wanted them to forcibly make a safe space for me. I'm
Got
rebelling because I need for you to give me attention. So I'm trying to get it any which way,
right.
you know? And it came in all the wrong ways. It came with beat downs and disrespectful
Right.
talk to us. And it was just like, I remember my dad one day told me, "You ain't gonna be nothing but a hoe in the Bronx on the corner
Right.
on food stamps." Like, he really thought ill of me,
Right.
and I'll never forget that. I forgive him because I have to
Of
make space.
course.
But that was something that I never wanted to give to my children, is that hurtful speech towards them,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, because that was
Right.
traumatic for me, and I never wanted to have them inherit that, you
Right.
know?
And I think that, that is a form, unfortunately, like verbal abuse. Like,
Absolutely.
what you put out there into the atmosphere, what you tell your kids, you know, is important and it's impactful.
Yeah.
And it's just like certain like that kind of thing. You don't forget there's so many things that my mom has told me as well that I would never forget. Like I forgive, but I just won't forget. You know
Right.
what I mean? And I try to do the same with my kids and not speak to them in a manner where it's like, talking down to them or,
Right.
speaking ill to them because that shit that you carry. You know
Yes.
what I mean? Like I remember so many things from my childhood, like, and that's when like my mom and we clashed a lot as well when I became a teenager because my mom moved out when I was 13 and I stood living with my dad until I was like 20.
Right.
Um and then my mom and I ended up buying a house together when I was 21. And then, we lived in separate spaces, but we lived under the same roof. And then
Right.
that's when things kind of got a little rocky.
Yeah. I
Right?
get
Because I
it.
was already an adult. I was already, in my way. I was still young, but I was trying to find my way. And she was very much like my grandmother, wanting all the respect, but not giving it.
Yeah.
And that's where I had an issue. And that's where we clash because I feel like I'm very big on respect and to give respect, to get respect, you have to give respect. And it's
Absolutely.
really important. You can't just be talking to
Extremely.
people how you want and then no matter who you are, mother, father, sister, brother, you're not going to talk to me anyway and think that I'm just going to be submissive
That's
and
right.
just not say anything. Cuz
That's
words hurt.
absolutely they do. They're a double-edged sword,
Yes.
you
And
know?
sometimes I'd rather get smacked.
Yes.
And I know there's like I don't want to get smacked either, but but you recover quickly from a hit.
Yeah,
But those words, let me tell you, those words they stick
they
and they
really.
hurt.
Yep. That's one thing, like, I'm dealing with a lot of, excuse my lingo, but it's a planetary talk, but I'm dealing with
No.
a lot of Saturn issues where Saturn is the
Mhm.
planet of like fatherhood and authority figures.
Yes.
And so, it's in my first house, which is like what I'm directly going to be dealing with. And I came here to help take care of my dad. And I'm reminded a lot of the trauma and all the
Right.
disrespectful things
Right.
that had occurred in my childhood. And now it's like I'm put here to deal with all this stuff now.
Yeah.
And it's like
Mm.
now, you know, I'm here to take care of you. I'm helping you out. You've got to give me respect. If you don't, I can't reciprocate what I'm not receiving,
Right.
you know.
Right. Right.
So, that pushback, I'm getting somewhere with him, now, but I'm also doing that healing and I'm helping him try to heal in the process,
Right.
and it takes a lot of courage to be in that position for
Mhm.
both of us,
Yes.
because that generation is such a
Mm.
proud generation.
It sure is. It's very proud, and I think that's the thing. And I was just gonna speak about that. like culturally, and you said it, you hit the nail right on the head. Um, very proud,
Mhm.
very private.
Yes.
They want super discretion. So many things happen like in their lives that was so traumatic that they probably haven't dealt with, and I say that a lot about my
Mhm.
mom too. I'm sure there's a trillion things that she's gone through, but they just refuse to deal with.
Mhm.
They don't want to seek therapy, they don't want to seek help.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy, that's not how we do things. And
Right.
it's a different time.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, I really feel like, and I told both of my parents, you got to stop relying on each other to make yourselves happy. You have to rely on yourself, and
Yes.
you've got to dig up what you don't want to dig up, what you've been sweeping under
Mhm.
the rug for so many years.
Mhm.
Because once you let all
Mhm.
those things out and you let them go and release them, it's gonna make room for better things to come in.
Right.
And your whole attitude, your whole life changes after you do all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's like liberating.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You peel back it's like an onion. I say this all the
Yes.
time. You peel back, like sometimes you have to peel back those layers and it's uncomfortable and it's painful and it could be really, really like sad and not good. But sometimes you
Yeah.
have to do that because that's the only way to figure out, okay, this is where I am, this is where I'm going, this is where I want to be.
Agreed.
And
Yep.
healing from those traumas is very, very difficult for some people
Yeah.
because some people don't know how to take that first step.
Absolutely. And another thing is too, is like, do they understand that their whole demeanor is based on trauma?
Right.
Because a lot of people don't even realize that their way of being is surrounded by the trauma that they dealt with or received, and they don't even realize that they have trauma.
Yes,
That's the thing.
because they don't think their experiences were traumatic. They
Right.
think that that is normal.
Normal.
Right?
Right.
They think that for them that's the norm, that's how we were raised, and
Mm.
that's just it.
Yeah.
Which I think is really funny because it definitely is not normal.
It isn't.
I seen a lot of things like as I got older. When I was younger, obviously you're young, you don't know.
Right.
But then you get into like your teenage years and you start seeing certain things and hearing certain things. And a lot of things made me very uncomfortable,
Mhm.
but I
Mm.
was young. What was I gonna say? You
Right.
know, and now it's like just having certain conversations. It's like, I was having a conversation with my uncle the other day, and I had mentioned that to him, and he's like, no, my mom wasn't abusive. She was just stern. That's the way that she was. But no, that shit was motherfucking abuse. I don't give a fuck what you say. You
Yeah.
can't wrap that shit in a pink bow. No,
Yep.
no.
That's right.
Being stern and being abusive is two different things.
Absolutely.
Two different things. You can be stern without being abusive.
Agreed. Agreed. There's a very fine line in, discipline where you're being stern and you're being abusive. You know, um, I feel like my sister and I were actually talking about this. My oldest sister and I have been spending a lot of time together because she's about 12 years older than I. And she wasn't in the house when I was a kid. She actually had
Right.
her own kids when I was a kid. And so our first half of our life, we weren't together, but now we're both taking care of our parents together. And so we've had a lot of realizations and epiphanies. And she says, I remember where, you know, we were in the adult conversations, like around the adult conversations, and they used to say children should be seen, not heard. And how very um, disturbing that is, where I feel children should be heard and seen,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and how we were never able to speak up. Even if they were wrong, we were never able to speak up. It was wrong because it was disrespectful to speak your mind or
Mhm.
point something out,
Yep.
you know? And I don't feel that that was healthy. And I'm so glad that we as parents now have liberated ourselves from that conditioned way of thinking
Mhm.
and have not handed that down to our children.
Right.
I remember people saying, "Oh, that's how my parents raised me, so I'm raising my kids like that." No, not if you want them to be respectful adults and,
Right.
not have trauma.
Right, and not be traumatized. I was just about to say that. I mean, because when you know better, you do better, and
Absolutely.
we got to a point where we started knowing better.
Hmm.
Like, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't sound right, and like you said, it's like it's such a conditioned way of thinking, and it makes your family toxic.
It does.
I don't care what anyone says. That shit is toxic. It's unhealthy. It's it's not the norm. Like, I remember that too, we couldn't say anything when we were in adult conversations. We had to sit in the corner or play with whatever, and
Yeah.
it's just like nobody could say anything. I mean, I have to say, like, in my immediate family, like, I grew up, there was a lot of love there,
Yeah.
but I was also the one that always spoke up. I listen. I always said what's on my mind. And I used to
Me
get
too.
beat.
Hmm.
I used to get beat because I always had something to say, because it's just like, why? Like, I
Right.
always question things. And even as an adult, my mom and I, we clashing right now because it's just like, no, we're not doing that. We're not
Right.
doing that. And sometimes you have to get off the hamster wheel, because that's what it feels
Absolutely.
like. It feels like an ongoing hamster wheel of the toxic bullshit.
Yeah, we're here to break those generational curses and those cycles and, start healing our bloodlines, man. Where we're not giving that to our future children's children or their children. We
Right.
don't want that to be normal chains and shackles with the ball at the end of it. We want them to be liberated and have voices for themselves and maybe even be the voice of the voiceless. You
Right.
know, I
Right.
mean, there's so many children out there still being raised in those old ways
Hmm.
because that was normal to their parents. And, you know, hopefully they'll understand and be liberated from that if they take their mind away from those structured ways. It's a very deep, deep thing
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
get away from those old structures, man. Like you really got to dig deep and break the foundation of that.
Yeah, because it's happened for so long.
Hmm.
Like, it's happened for so long, and it's just, when you think about certain things that happen, is like, but why?
Right.
Like, why did you allow these things to happen?
Yeah.
Like, and in my situation, I feel like the reason why my mother and I clash a lot is because there's so many things that my mom wanted to tell my grandmother. She never had the chance to, and then she passed away.
Mm.
And I'm getting the shitty end of the stick, because it's
Damn.
like, I'm the one that's there, or that was there. And they say that you hurt the ones that are closest to you.
Right.
But I think that, and I tell my mom this all the time, I think that if she had the opportunity to really say what was on her mind, she will feel so much better about certain things.
Agreed.
Because then somebody dies and then you can't tell them shit. And it's just
Mhm.
like, it's pointless.
It really is. I mean, it's pointless to hold on to that and then, closure. I feel like getting closure, honestly, is bullshit. I don't believe in closure. I believe in healing wounds.
Right.
You know, you're never gonna get, not never, but you're not always gonna get an apology from somebody. Somebody, may not
Right.
ever want to talk about something, or in your case, your grandmother passed away before, your mom got to speak to her and tell her what she felt. There's gonna be situations where you're not gonna be able to speak your piece to that person. So now it's your problem.
Right.
Do you choose to hold on to that? Do you really want to hold on to that just because you didn't get to say it to them?
Right.
No. You got to make room for the better things so that way, you're not carrying all this weight on you and it makes you like a very miserable person.
Yes. Yes, because you holding on to all that shit. And
Yep.
I had mentioned this to someone just the other day when I was talking about, like, we were having a conversation about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for you,
Yes.
for yourself.
For yourself.
Because when you forgive someone, someone that made you upset, or someone that pissed you off, or someone that, you know, offended you in any kind of way,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. They already did something to make you mad.
Yep.
So whether or not they apologize doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
But you got to forgive and move the fuck on.
That's right. And I feel like there's people who are in ongoing situations, you know, where that generation is super narcissistic, like heavily narcissistic,
Mhm.
you know, where these marriages are continuing
Mhm.
with that empath and narcissistic combination. There's a
Right.
very thin line between forgiveness and tolerance. Are you really forgiving or are you just tolerating?
Right.
And you got to really decipher which one, you're giving your energy to. You don't have to forgive somebody and still be with them.
Very true.
You couldn't forgive them from afar.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Because, like you said, forgiveness is for yourself, not for the other person.
Yep, and
No,
sometimes it's just relationships are so toxic. Sometimes you gotta let them go. Like,
that,
we're so heavy on family and relationships, and but some relationships you just can't hold on to, unfortunately.
that's right.
You can't hold on to them, and though we want to, have our family members or have our friends in our lives, if they ain't no good, they ain't no good. That's it. I
That's
mean,
right.
you gotta call, what is it? You gotta call a spade a spade.
Yep. Yep.
Just because they're your mother, or just because they're your father, or just because they're your sister or your cousin or your uncle, whatever, blood makes you family. But if the person is toxic, they're toxic. And sometimes they don't even know.
Mhm. That's
And it's like sometimes it's lack of self-awareness, but
yeah.
sometimes people are just assholes. You know what I mean? But it's
Yep.
also because they're carrying so much shit inside that it's just coming out.
Yeah, they project all that shit that's inside of them. And to me, like you said, just because it's your mother, your father, like titles mean shit to me when there's a lack of respect.
Facts.
That means nothing. You're just a person right now who is not giving me respect,
Right.
you know? And while I won't get super disrespectful, I am going to tell you what it is.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you what I'm feeling and let you know here's the mirror. You need to look at your actions,
Right.
you know? Be self aware. Otherwise, I'm not going to put myself in a situation with you. I'm not going to put myself in any kind of predicament where I need to defend myself. I don't like that kind of energy. And I feel
Mhm.
like that is very toxic to be in an energy where you're constantly having to lower yourself, shrink yourself down because
Yes.
of these so-called titles,
Mhm.
or constantly feel like you have to defend yourself. That's super toxic.
Right.
you know it's super
Right.
self-deprecating too.
Right. And it's just like being on that hamster wheel.
Right.
Because it's like, things get good. Like in my situation, like between me and my mom, what would happen is that we would be good, 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 and then some shit will happen, and then it's like we're not good. And then it
Yeah.
will be good, 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 and then something will happen, and then we're not good. And it's just like, all right, hold up a second, wait a
Yeah.
second. I cannot, like, especially growing older, doing this podcast, like, and being on this journey, it's like you start to look at things really different. You
Yeah.
start to think about the energies, you start to think about the people you want in your circle, you start to think about so many different things. And it's just like, what does not fit you anymore, you got to just put it to the side and let it go.
That's right. That's right. You
If it
got
don't
to.
suit you, you got to let it go.
That's right. That is so true.
So that's what we're going to tell the people tonight. Listen, tell them, Mandy.
That's it. Let that toxicity out the window, air it out of your house.
Mhm.
Raise those vibrations too. Do what makes you feel happy no matter what anybody else says. No matter what anybody else thinks. If it's something that is out of the norm that your family usually wouldn't do, but it makes you happy, do the damn thing because you're the only one who has to live, your life. It's nobody has to live your life. Everyone's living their own life. If they choose to hold on to things, let them. You let it go.
Yes, and stop getting caught up on titles, people. That's another thing I wanna say. Listen, I am, and I said this, I think I said this in a live the other day, like, I'm super family oriented. I love my family. I live for my family, and
Yes,
I will do anything for my family. But some of my family members do not suit me anymore, and I'm sorry. It's just not
that's
gonna
it.
work for me.
That's right. I don't put my energy close to anybody else's low vibrational energy, family or not. You can't.
Right. Right.
You know, I'm like a sponge, and I don't like to absorb negative energy,
Right.
you know, because I
Definitely.
carry it with me everywhere. So I try my best to stay away from certain situations and certain family members because I
Yep.
understand that they're dealing with their own trauma, and sometimes they don't even mean to be that negative because you got negative Nancy sometimes.
Mhm. Oh, I got a few
Okay.
of those too. Lord have mercy.
Yes. And they don't sometimes mean to be that negative. It's just their way of thinking.
Mhm. Mhm.
And even though you try to help them to a certain extent, if they're not taking any advice, you just gotta like put the brakes on it and try to separate yourself.
Yep.
Attachment is everything, you
Yep.
know.
There you go. So there you have it, people. Don't feel obligated to deal with anyone that you feel is toxic, no matter what the family title.
That's
Let the
right.
shit go. Be forgiving. And if it doesn't suit you, move on.
Yep.
And on that notes, we're going to wrap this up, boo. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Tell the people where they can find you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me as well. You can find me on Instagram at the Lavender Code, and it's the underscore lavender underscore code. That's where I'm at.
Y'all better hit her up, get them herbs, and get that stuff. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Have a good
Thank you for
night.
having me, Tanya. Always a
Take
pleasure.
Yes,
Always.
likewise.
Yes.
Take care, hun.
You too, Mama.